It appears that I pissed off the IWC simply for tweeting out a couple matchups I wish Will Ospreay could have with WWE superstars. So today we're going to talk about it. And just remember guys, it's not that deep. Okay, so this is the tweet that I put out yesterday. While I think Will Ospreay has been handled well in AEW, I still kind of wish he went to WWE to have a big time feud with Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Drew McIntyre. I think people really underestimate his promo skills and could have made some magic with these 3 stars. And for some reason, this pissed off a lot of people. Now, the funniest thing about this entire tweet is that it's not actually a WWE versus AEW thing. I'm a fan of both companies, and I've actually been a really big fan of Will Ospreay in AEW. And I've also said countless times on the record, on videos, or through Twitter that Will Ospreay in AEW is really freaking awesome to watch. I enjoy watching the way that he's been booked. And for that reason, I find this so incredibly funny because it's basically the IWC telling me that I simply cannot wish for other matchups that would be out there. One of the funniest things about this entire tweet, by the way, is that in all the years that I've been covering wrestling, I have never been loyal to a company, but I have been a fan of certain individuals in each company. So for example, many years ago, I really wanted Kenny Omega versus Roman Reigns. And I always said, hey, if that was a possibility, that would be great. And the reason for that is because I'm a fan of Kenny Omega and I'm a fan of Roman Reigns. Obviously, contracts get in the way. That's why we call it fantasy matches, because they simply can't happen. And now that Will Ospreay's in AEW, he can't have these matches because these 3 gentlemen that I listed in my tweet are signed with the WWE long term. But it doesn't change the fact that I am a fan of all 4 individuals and would love to see some magic being made. Now, if you look at the first response to the tweet, Mr. Wrestling Fan says, no, Will is where he belongs. And I never said he didn't belong in AEW. Again, let me just reiterate, my tweet explains pretty perfectly well. I think he's been handled well in AEW. So why can't I just be a fan of Will Ospreay and what he's doing over there? But why can't I also want to see other matchups that couldn't be possible because of where he is? Again, it just simply doesn't make sense, but this is why wrestling Twitter is so funny. Justin says he's made magic in AEW basically every time he's out there. Yeah, he has. That's part of the reason why I have a desire to watch him go up and have matches against top dogs in another company that he wouldn't be able to have because they're signed to another company that doesn't work with the company Will Ospreay is currently signed to. So again, as I said in the original tweet, he's been handled very well. And let me be very clear. This is me purely wanting fantasy matches that aren't really, I mean, that's really what they are. They're just fantasy matches. And if you keep going on, there's some people who understand. Took Timbo says Will Ospreay is one of the best wrestlers out there. I agree. I mean, I think Will Ospreay is one of the best wrestlers out there. I also think I have watched enough Will Ospreay promos. And I don't know why people seem to disagree with me here. I don't find it to be that controversial. But Will Ospreay is a hell of a talker. I think he brings a very authentic feel to his promos to the point where they don't necessarily feel scripted. People don't seem to agree, but I think Will Ospreay is more than just cool moves. I think Will Ospreay has great presentation, great character work, and he's really good at promos. So that's why I feel like these 3 programs, which happen to be 3 of my favorites right now in wrestling, he would probably be able to cook with them and make some real good magic with them, especially Drew McIntyre, considering all the great stuff that Drew McIntyre has done in the WWE in 2024. But nonetheless, we continue. Now, there's other tweets that are in response to this where some people just say, hey, he hasn't been a big deal in AEW and whatever. Let me just address that. I think Will Ospreay clearly is one of the top guys in the company, and for AEW moving forward, especially as they enter a new era with the streaming on the Max deal, Will Ospreay is somebody I would be building my company around. So for all those people that responded to that tweet that don't see the value in Will Ospreay, let me just be perfectly clear, verbally saying this on the record. Will Ospreay should be one of the top guys in AEW and should be treated as such, and I don't agree with you if you are the one to tell me that Will Ospreay has not been handled well in AEW. So then another interesting tweet, Sarastro, very good follower of mine, he says there are matchups that I would love to see, but I also know that much of WWE watered down Ricochet style. I have concerns that they would do the same to Will. And yeah, obviously that is a factor, but I think Will Ospreay literally is just more than flips and cool moves. I think Will Ospreay would be able to adapt to pretty much any style, and that's what makes him truly a great professional wrestler. And then my favorite part of the IWC, you know, they just really don't know much about you. They enter into conversations without knowing anything. And then we get a tweet from Garrick Knight. He says, "Why don't you wish McIntyre went to AEW?" And what's actually really funny is I have over 2,000 videos on my YouTube channel, so we could just find it if we need to. But guys, Drew McIntyre, when there was rumors of him possibly leaving WWE, I remember specifically saying, hey, Drew McIntyre should stay in WWE. But at the same time too, there are some insane matchups I would love to see him have in AEW, and I would trust AEW to do well by him too. As you can tell, the responses to this are endless. I mean, listen, there's guys coming out here and responding to it saying, hey, he would just be doing 40-minute promos and stuff like that, whatever. Again, I don't really care about what the company does. I'm just talking about my fandom for those three names I mentioned. I feel like Will Ospreay would put on some great matches, and there's a whole bunch of people that just really want to talk about the moves and the watered down, and WWE would drop the ball and this and that, but that's literally not what the tweet is about. And this is the problem with the IWC, and again, that's why I have to talk about this. It's not that deep. I want to be a fan of professional wrestling, but to be honest, when I see responses like this, it just seems like pro wrestling fans want to gatekeep absolutely everything that is happening in the industry, and then they wonder why pro wrestling isn't getting more popular. You know, and the funny thing about this all, as I make this video, I just keep thinking about how weird the IWC is. You know, the internet wrestling community truly isn't mature enough to have any sort of dialogue. Everything has to be like an emotional warfare between WWE and AEW. And these are the same people that tout at you and tell you, hey, just enjoy your wrestling. And then when you talk about the matchups that you want to see, they have a trillion reasons as to why you're some sort of piece of shit, you know, and it's just such a weird thing. It's such a weird behavior, and honestly, it's such a big turnoff. If you were somebody who doesn't watch wrestling and you got into wrestling and you've seen this kind of behavior, you would be turned off by it. You wouldn't care to engage in any sort of conversation, and that's probably the reason why pro wrestling doesn't grow, honestly. Like, I think it's a contributing factor for sure. I think pro wrestling is really cool. I think every company offers something pretty sweet and pretty unique. But for some reason, if you say WWE does something good, you're automatically being paid off by the WWE. And if you say AEW is being good, everybody thinks Tony Khan is paying you off. And that's not really enjoyable. Now, for me, I don't get offended by any of it. I say it's not that deep for many reasons. But I've been doing this stuff since 2010. And my opinion on wrestling and segments and matches and everything changes every single day. That's where, you know, watching me on a daily basis, you'll see how consistent I am with my coverage. But it is absolutely funny. I'm reading this stuff and it's just like most of the responses are negative simply because people think I'm bashing AEW and how they've handled Will Ospreay. But if you go beyond this tweet, you would know, well, one, if you read the tweet, you would know that's not the case. But also, if you wanted to do the extra work, which most people in this world don't want to do, but if you want to see the extra work of what somebody says when they're analyzing pro wrestling, they would know that I'm a massive Will Ospreay fan. So it's just really funny to see how all of this has kind of come down. But wrestling fans being emotional will probably never change, and it's honestly going to get worse the more that AEW and WWE grow. So the reality is there's probably going to be more content like this where people are going to see my reactions to things that just simply aren't that deep.